The sun is finally going down, casting long, quiet shadows across my porch. For most of my life, I have loved this time of day. The evening is supposed to be a time of peace, a time to rest your bones after a long day of living. But there was a dark period back when I was 65 years old when the setting sun filled me with absolute dread. I was terrified of the night. I was terrified of my own bed. People look at me now, at 101 years old, and they see a man at peace. But 35 years ago, I was a prisoner in my own body, tortured every single night by an invisible enemy. If you have ever been jolted awake at 2 a.m. by a pain so sharp it takes your breath away, you know exactly what I am talking about. It would start deep in my calves, a knot pulling tighter and tighter until the muscle felt like a thick rope about to snap. I would bite my pillow to keep from waking my wife. I would massage my leg with tears in my eyes, waiting for the muscle to finally let go. And when it wasn't the violent cramps, it was the tingling. It felt like 1,000 tiny ants marching up and down my feet and ankles, a constant maddening buzz that made it impossible to rest. The next morning, I would wake up exhausted. My eyes were heavy, my temper was short, and the world felt like it was moving too fast for me to keep up. I was aging twice as fast because my body never got to truly sleep. I went to the doctors, of course. They patted my shoulder, smiled a sympathetic smile, and told me, "Well, you're getting older. The body breaks down. It is just a normal part of aging." I refused to believe that. I refused to accept that the rest of my life would be a sleepless nightmare, and I was right. It wasn't my age. It wasn't my destiny. The problem was a completely invisible habit, a daily routine that was silently destroying my legs from the inside out. I spent months trying to figure out what was wrong with my diet. I drank more water. I stopped drinking coffee in the afternoon. I even stopped eating my favorite salty snacks. But the cramps kept coming. The ants kept marching. That is when I realized that the problem was not what I was lacking in my diet. The problem was not what I was putting into my mouth. The problem was what I was doing with my body after the sun went down. I had a nightly ritual. It was a habit so common and so celebrated in our society that I thought it was my reward for a hard day's work. Every evening, after a heavy dinner, I would walk straight into the living room, sink deep into my favorite soft armchair, and turn on the television. I would sit there, barely moving a muscle, for 3 or 4 hours. I would watch the news. I would watch the shows until my eyes forced themselves shut. Then I would drag my heavy legs to bed. That ritual, that innocent evening of television and sitting perfectly still, was the invisible enemy. Let me explain this to you without any complicated medical words. I want you to imagine your body as a landscape and your blood as a beautiful, fast-flowing river. As long as the water is moving, it stays crystal clear and full of life. It brings fresh water to the trees and washes away the dirt. But what happens if you build a dam? What happens when the river stops? It becomes a stagnant pond. Mud, debris, and sludge begin to sink and settle at the very bottom. The water turns thick and heavy. When you eat a full meal and immediately collapse into a soft chair for hours, your internal river stops flowing. You are building a dam right in the middle of your body. Because you are sitting upright, Gravity pulls all that heavy sludge down to the lowest point of your body, your feet and your calves. The vital pathways get choked with debris. The nerves in your legs start crying out for fresh water, and they do it by sending you those terrible tingling signals. Your muscles are starving for oxygen, and they spasm in panic, creating those violent knots in the middle of the night. The day I realized I was turning my own legs into a stagnant swamp was the day I changed my life forever. I broke the ritual. That very evening, after my last bite of dinner, I did not go to the living room. I did not turn on the glowing screen. Instead, I put on my shoes, stepped out onto this very porch, and went for a walk. I didn't run. I didn't push myself to sweat. I just took a gentle, peaceful stroll around my neighborhood under the evening sky. That simple act of walking after a meal opened the dam. It shattered it completely. It got the river flowing again. The gentle movement of my legs acted like a pump, taking all that heavy energy from my dinner and pushing it back up toward my heart, sweeping away the invisible sludge before it could settle in my muscles. By the time I returned home, 15 minutes later, my legs felt light. They felt alive, but I didn't stop there. I wanted to make sure the river stayed clean all night long, so I added 2 small tools from nature to my new evening routine. About an hour before bed, I started eating half of a plain yellow banana. Why a banana? Because it is packed with potassium. Now, I like to think of potassium as the electrical wiring in a house. When the wiring is bad or old, the lights flicker and spark. When your legs are low on potassium, your muscles spark and cramp up violently. The banana fixes the wiring. It sends a smooth, quiet electrical signal to your calves that says, "It is okay, you can relax now." Right after the banana, I eat a small handful of raw pumpkin seeds. These little green seeds are a gold mine of magnesium. Magnesium is like a heavy, calming blanket for your nervous system. Remember those 1,000 tiny ants marching up and down your legs? That is your nerves buzzing out of control because they don't have their natural brakes. Magnesium is the brake pedal. It coats those angry nerves, quiets the buzzing, and turns off the anxious electricity so you can actually rest. And right before I pulled the blankets over me, I added one final step. I would stand facing my bedroom wall, put my hands flat against it, and gently stretch my calves backward for just 30 seconds on each leg. I wasn't doing a hard workout. I was physically pulling the tightness out of the ropes. I was telling my muscles, it is safe now. The river is flowing. The brakes are on. You can sleep. I will never forget that first week. The 1,000 crawling ants disappeared. The sudden, violent knots in my calves faded into nothing. For the first time in years, I closed my eyes at 10 o'clock and did not open them until the morning sun hit my face. I woke up with a kind of energy I hadn't felt since I was 40. I felt like a new man. When you finally allow your body to sleep deeply without pain, it repairs the damage of the day. Sleep is the great healer. You cannot fix a broken machine if you never let it truly power down. I am sharing this with you today because I know how many of you are suffering in the dark. I know how lonely the night can feel when your own legs won't let you rest. You sit on the edge of the bed rubbing your calves, watching the clock tick, thinking that your best days are behind you. You think This is just what happens when you get old. Hear me now. Pain is not a requirement of getting older. You have the power to change the flow of your river. If you are spending your evenings frozen in a chair, watching other people live their lives on a screen while your own body rusts and your legs turn to lead, it is time to break the ritual. Tonight, after your dinner, leave the dishes in the sink. Step outside. Breathe the evening air, move your legs and let the water flow. Your bed should be a sanctuary, a place of peace, not a place of torture. I want you to be honest with yourself and with me. How many hours do you sit after dinner? Have you been waking up with those terrible leg cramps, feeling like there are ants under your skin? Leave a comment down below and tell me your story. Let's bring this struggle into the light. You are not alone in this. We are not meant to decay quietly in the dark. We are meant to live fully, to move freely, right up to the very last sunset. If my story gave you a little bit of hope today, please subscribe to Limitless Aging and hit that notification bell. We are building an army of people who refuse to just fade away. Turn off the screen tonight. Go for that walk. Eat that banana to fix the wiring and those seeds to put on the brakes. Stretch those legs. Reclaim your sleep, and you will reclaim your life. Good night, my friends, and may your rest be deep and peaceful.